It started like any other Thanksgiving. The table was set, the turkey was in the oven, and the air was thick with the warmth of family. But behind closed doors, an argument was about to take a devastating turn. In an instant, a wife who had given everything to her family would lose her life at the hands of the one person who vowed to protect her. What could cause a devoted husband, a man who shared years of memories and children with his wife, to cross the line into violence? Was it a single disagreement that pushed him to the edge, or was there something far deeper, something that had been hidden for years? On Thanksgiving Day, Lisa Miller lost more than her life. She lost everything she had ever known, and her husband, Chris, would be left to explain how a simple argument escalated into a deadly act of rage. This is a story of love, betrayal, and an unforgivable moment that changed everything. What happened that Thanksgiving night, and what drove Chris to do the unthinkable? Stay with us as we unravel the shocking and tragic details of a day meant to bring a family together, but instead turned into a nightmare that no one saw coming. This is the heartbreaking case of Lisa Miller, a woman whose life was cut short by the man who promised to love and protect her. To those who knew her, Lisa was the embodiment of devotion. Her family meant everything to her, but that devotion was met with a chilling betrayal. What led to her death? Was it the result of a lifetime of growing frustration, unspoken resentments that finally reached their breaking point? Or was it simply one terrible moment, a small disagreement that spiraled beyond control, leaving devastation in its wake? In the days that followed, the answers would not come easily. As the investigation unfolded, the truth behind that tragic night would become even more complex, revealing a darker side to a marriage that once seemed picture-perfect. Join us as we examine the events that led to Lisa Miller's untimely death, and the shocking truth that no one saw coming. Before we continue with this tragic story, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss an important update on true crime cases like this one. If you're moved by Lisa's story, give this video a like and share it with those who need to hear the truth. And don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments. What do you think really happened that Thanksgiving night? We want to hear from you. Now, let's dive deeper into the case. Lisa Miller was 34 years old, a devoted wife and mother to two young children. To the outside world, she was the picture of happiness, a woman who poured her heart into her family. Her friends would often describe her as kind, loving, and selfless, always putting her family's needs above her own. She worked tirelessly to keep her home warm and full of love, creating a safe space for her children to grow. Her life, on the surface, was everything one could ask for. But like so many, Lisa's life was far more complicated than it appeared. Her husband, Chris Miller, was 36, an ambitious man with a successful career. To the people around him, he had everything: a beautiful wife, two children, a stable job, a home. It seemed as though their family was the epitome of success, a couple that had it all. But as time went on, cracks began to appear beneath the surface, invisible to everyone but those closest to them. The couple's once perfect relationship, full of love and promise, began to shift. Small disagreements turned into larger rifts. It wasn't just one argument that changed things. It was the slow erosion of trust, of connection. As their marriage became strained, the distance between them grew. Lisa, though always dedicated to her family, began to feel the weight of her efforts that seemed unnoticed by Chris. Meanwhile, Chris, unable or unwilling to communicate his frustrations, withdrew further into himself, becoming increasingly cold and distant. In the months leading up to that fateful Thanksgiving, the tension was palpable. Lisa had tried to reach out, to get things back on track, but Chris seemed uninterested. What had once been a partnership built on love and respect now felt like a distant memory. There were moments of anger, frustration, and the quiet understanding that something had broken, but neither one seemed to know how to fix it. The Thanksgiving dinner they had planned, a day meant to bring their family together, was supposed to be an opportunity for reconciliation, a time to move past the pain and reconnect. But in the silence between them, it was clear that the distance had only grown. What happened that evening was no longer just about a disagreement. It was about everything that had been left unsaid. And as the night wore on, a small, seemingly insignificant argument would tip the scales, setting off a chain of events that no one could have predicted. In those final moments, did Lisa know the danger she was in? Did Chris understand the consequences of his actions? What led to that fateful moment when a loving husband would make a decision that would forever change the lives of everyone around him? As we peel back the layers of their marriage and the days leading up to that night, the truth becomes even more chilling. The tension had been building for months, and all it took was one spark to ignite a tragedy. They had been together for over a decade, years filled with shared memories, milestones, and the quiet comfort of familiarity. To the outside world, Lisa and Chris Miller's relationship appeared to be the epitome of suburban bliss. They had the house, the kids, the vacations, everything that seemed to define success. But what no one could see, what no one could have known, was the deepening strain between them. Lisa had always been the heart of their home, the one who kept everything running smoothly, making sure her children were happy and that Chris was taken care of. Yet, beneath the surface, she began to feel increasingly isolated. Her once vibrant relationship with Chris had started to feel like a distant memory. As the days turned into months, Lisa found herself asking for more connection, more communication, more understanding. But those pleas were met with silence. Chris seemed oblivious to her need for change, unwilling or unable to see how much she was hurting. Chris, the man who had once been her partner and confidant, had become more withdrawn with each passing day. He buried himself in his work, in his own frustrations, and in the routine of life. Friends and family began to notice the growing tension, but no one could quite put their finger on what had gone wrong. The couple still functioned in public, still smiled for photos, still showed up to family gatherings. But behind closed doors, something was different. Lisa was struggling, and Chris seemed distant, lost in his own world. Their conversations, once full of laughter and shared dreams, had become cold and functional. Lisa wanted to talk, wanted to fix what was broken, but Chris resisted. The distance between them became harder to ignore, and as the months went by, Lisa's frustration grew. She began to ask for changes, small ones at first, more time together, a willingness to listen. But Chris was unwilling to give. Every request was met with resistance. Every attempt to reconnect was shut down. It wasn't just the silence that hurt. It was the feeling that she wasn't being seen or heard, that the man she loved was slipping further away from her, with no way of turning back. And then, Thanksgiving came. A holiday meant for bringing families together, a time for reconciliation, for healing. But for Lisa and Chris, it would become the day everything fell apart. What should have been a time of warmth, laughter, and gratitude instead turned into an unthinkable tragedy. What was it that finally set Chris off? Was it the mounting tension, the years of unresolved issues, or was it something more? A simple disagreement over something so trivial that it might have been forgotten, if only things had been different. The holiday that was supposed to bring them closer, to give them a chance to reset, would instead become the turning point in a tragedy no one could have imagined. And that night, the life of a devoted wife and mother would be cut short, forever altering the course of a family's future. Thanksgiving started off like any other. The sun was shining through the windows, and the smell of a roasting turkey filled the house. Lisa had spent the morning bustling around the kitchen, making sure everything was just right. The table was set, the side dishes were ready, and the house had that familiar warmth, something every family looks forward to on this holiday. She had everything planned out perfectly, just as she always did, hoping to create the kind of day that would allow her family to forget the tensions that had been building for months. But as the day wore on, it became clear that not everything was as perfect as it seemed. The usual holiday cheer was absent, replaced by an uncomfortable silence. The tension, which had been lurking in the corners of their relationship for weeks, began to rear its head, little by little. It started with something small, a disagreement over the family plans. A trivial issue, one that would have been brushed aside in any other circumstance. But today, for reasons no one could explain, the smallest of disagreements quickly turned into something bigger. Words were exchanged, voices raised. Lisa, already feeling the weight of everything that had been left unsaid, was at her breaking point. Chris, with his usual stoic expression, didn't seem willing to compromise. What was supposed to be a day of togetherness was now slipping away into something else entirely. And then it happened. The argument shifted, becoming something far more personal. It wasn't about the dinner or the plans. It was about something deeper, something that had been eating away at their relationship for months. It was about a moment of pride, of unwillingness to back down. Lisa refused to apologize, and that was the breaking point. What seemed like a trivial matter, the refusal to admit fault over a small disagreement, turned into the thing that pushed everything to the edge. Why was this such a trigger for Chris? Was it because, over the months, he had grown weary of trying to fix things? Or was there something more? A deeper frustration that had been bubbling under the surface, growing stronger with each passing day. Lisa had always been the one to keep the peace, to make everything seem okay. But on this day she stood her ground, unwilling to take the blame for something she didn't feel was her fault. And in that moment, the smallest of things, the refusal to apologize, became the flashpoint for an argument that would only grow more intense. Words were exchanged, harsh words, filled with years of unspoken anger. As the argument escalated, Chris's patience seemed to run thin, and Lisa, in the heat of the moment, couldn't understand why he wouldn't just listen. This wasn't just about a disagreement over Thanksgiving plans. It was about everything that had been left unresolved for so long. But no one could have known that this argument, something so seemingly insignificant, would be the thing that set everything in motion. The small disagreement had now become a full-blown confrontation, with both sides digging in their heels, and somewhere, in that moment, the course of the evening, of everything, changed forever. As the argument unfolded, it became clear that this wasn't just about a simple difference in opinion. Chris had been holding on to something for much longer, something that, to Lisa, seemed trivial, but to him had festered and grown. The day before, Chris had made a comment that struck Lisa hard. He had criticized her for spending too much time with her friends, accusing her of neglecting their family in favor of socializing. To Lisa, it felt like an unfair judgment, especially considering everything she had been doing to hold their family together. She had tried to brush it off, thinking it was just another passing criticism. But as the day wore on, the frustration from that comment lingered, simmering in the background, never fully addressed. For Chris, however, the issue was still unresolved. He wanted an apology. He needed it. But Lisa, feeling unjustly criticized and hurt, refused to back down. What had started as a comment about her friends had now escalated into a confrontation over respect, over perceived blame. Lisa couldn't understand why he couldn't just let it go, but for Chris, it was something he couldn't shake. The more Lisa resisted, the more his anger built. What started as a simple disagreement now seemed to be touching on deeper emotions. Every word, every refusal to apologize, seemed to push Chris further into a state of rage. His patience had worn thin, and the anger that had been quietly simmering for months finally boiled over. But was this really the only reason for Chris's violent outburst? Was it just the frustration over an apology? Or were there deeper, more unresolved issues driving him? Some people who knew Chris believe his anger had been building for much longer than just one day. They spoke of insecurities, of a man who had never fully reconciled with his own fears. Fears of inadequacy, of not being enough for Lisa. His quiet frustrations had been buried under the surface for months, possibly years, unnoticed by most. And then there was the strain of his personal and professional life, the pressures of maintaining the perfect image of a successful man with a happy family. Behind closed doors, Chris had become increasingly withdrawn, unable or unwilling to open up about the things that bothered him. Every small issue, every passing comment from Lisa, seemed to add another layer to his frustration. The refusal to apologize, something so seemingly small, had become the tipping point, the catalyst that unleashed all of Chris's pent-up anger. But was this truly the moment that sent him over the edge, or was there something more lurking in the background? Was this the end result of months of unresolved tension, or had something else triggered that fateful outburst? The answers were now lost in the aftermath of what happened next. As the investigation into the events of that night unfolded, conflicting theories began to surface, each offering a different perspective on what had truly happened. Some close to the family believed that this tragic event was the unfortunate result of a toxic argument spiraling out of control, an argument that should have never escalated the way it did. They argued that what started as a simple disagreement over something as trivial as a refusal to apologize had somehow morphed into a deadly confrontation. In their eyes, Chris had snapped in the heat of the moment, overwhelmed by frustration and anger. In the chaos of their argument, with the pressure of a perfect holiday slipping through their fingers, one thing led to another, and before anyone could intervene, it was too late. But then there were others who saw things differently. They believed that Chris's violent outburst was not a one-time accident, but rather the culmination of years of deep-seated resentment. For them, the signs had been there all along, hidden beneath the surface of a marriage that appeared perfect to the outside world. Could it be that Chris had been harboring anger for far longer than anyone realized? Had the cracks in their relationship been ignored, their warning signs unnoticed? Some speculated that Chris had been emotionally abusing Lisa for years, his frustrations growing in private, while his actions became more controlling and dismissive. They believed that what appeared to be a sudden snap was in fact the explosive end to a slow, simmering buildup of emotional neglect and resentment. For these individuals, the refusal to apologize wasn't just a trivial matter. It was the final catalyst that exposed the depths of an abusive dynamic. But was this truly the case? Or had Chris just lost control over something as seemingly insignificant as a simple disagreement? Was it really about the apology, or was it something much darker, hidden for years, that finally broke through the cracks? No matter where the truth lay, the questions only deepened. Could this tragic event be the result of years of unchecked emotional turmoil? Or was it a momentary lapse in judgment that took everything and everyone by surprise? So, what do you think? Was it really just the argument over the apology that set everything in motion? Or do you believe there were deeper, more troubling issues at play here, ones that had been building for much longer than anyone realized? Could this tragic event have been the result of years of emotional strain, or was it just a momentary loss of control? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this case. Drop your theories in the comments below. Let's see what you think. Was there more to this story than meets the eye? Now it's time for you to weigh in. Do you think Chris Miller snapped because of a single fight? Or was there something darker at play, something deeper that led to this tragic outcome? Cast your vote in the poll above, and let's see what the majority thinks. As we try to piece together the events that led to that devastating night, I want to hear from you. What do you think? Could Lisa's life have been saved if only she had apologized? Or was Chris truly driven by this one single moment? Or were there warning signs we missed along the way? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Could there have been something more we didn't see, something we overlooked? As the investigation into Chris Miller's actions unfolded, the police worked tirelessly to piece together the events of that tragic Thanksgiving evening. Every detail was scrutinized, every moment carefully examined. But one thing became abundantly clear. Chris showed no remorse for what had happened. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, his demeanor remained cold and detached. He offered no apology, no indication of regret. To those who witnessed his responses, it appeared as though he had shut himself off from any emotional responsibility for the life he had taken. But could there be more to this? Was Chris hiding something darker, something deeper that hadn't yet been uncovered? As the investigation continued, the answers slowly started to emerge, but they only raised more questions. Evidence soon surfaced that cast doubt on Chris's defense, revealing inconsistencies in his story and opening up the possibility that there were more secrets hidden beneath the surface. What had really happened in that house? Was it just a momentary snap of rage, or was there something more insidious at play, something that Chris had tried to keep hidden from everyone? The deeper the investigators dug, the murkier the case became. What was Chris Miller really hiding? And could his calm, almost indifferent response to the situation be the biggest clue of all? In the wake of Lisa's tragic death, the world that once seemed so perfect for the Miller family came crashing down. The police acted quickly, and Chris was arrested, charged with second-degree murder. But what followed would reveal more than just a brutal act. It would expose the dark cracks that had long been hidden beneath the surface. As the trial began, the courtroom became a stage for a harrowing investigation into the heart of their troubled marriage. The prosecutor's team, relentless in their pursuit of the truth, uncovered disturbing details that painted a chilling picture of a man spiraling out of control. At first glance, the events of that Thanksgiving night seemed almost like an accident, a heated argument gone too far. But as the pieces of Chris's life were laid bare, the image of the man who stood in front of the courtroom began to shift. What had seemed like an isolated outburst now seemed more like the tragic end to a series of deep-rooted frustrations. The question on everyone's mind was this: was it really just the result of an argument, or was Chris Miller, in truth, a man capable of violence driven by years of hidden resentment for his wife? The more the trial unfolded, the more this question seemed impossible to ignore. Lisa's friends and family painted a picture of a woman who had been loving and dedicated, but who had also felt trapped by the weight of a marriage that had, over time, become colder and more distant. They spoke of her efforts to salvage their relationship, the countless attempts to communicate, and how, despite all her best intentions, Chris's responses had grown more indifferent and, at times, downright hostile. But as the defense team tried to portray the argument as a tragic outburst of anger, the truth about their marriage was slowly revealed, and it wasn't pretty. The cracks that had appeared in their relationship over the years were no longer just minor disagreements. They were symptoms of a much deeper dysfunction, a dysfunction that Chris had never been willing to confront until it was too late. The evidence uncovered during the trial showed that Chris's anger had been simmering for months. Friends and colleagues testified about his growing frustration, his bouts of jealousy, and his tendency to lash out when things didn't go his way. It was clear that there had been much more going on behind closed doors than anyone had realized. But the biggest revelation came when the jury heard about the emotional toll this had taken on Lisa. She had been unhappy for a long time, but what was worse, she had been isolated, unable to turn to anyone for support, trapped in a marriage where her needs were ignored. Could this have pushed Chris over the edge? Could this have been the catalyst for that night, that one argument that ended it all? In the end, the jury deliberated, and the decision was made. Chris Miller was convicted of second-degree murder. But while justice had been served in the eyes of the law, for those who knew Lisa, the real question remained. Could anyone have seen the signs sooner? Could anything have been done to prevent that tragic night? As the case closed, one thing was certain. The story of Lisa and Chris Miller was a heartbreaking reminder that behind every closed door, there can be an entirely different reality, one that, when left unchecked, can result in unimaginable tragedy. As the trial reached its conclusion, the shocking details that emerged left the public stunned. How did Chris Miller defend himself? His calm demeanor in the courtroom seemed at odds with the brutal act he was accused of. As the defense team worked tirelessly to downplay the gravity of his actions, they struggled to refute the mounting evidence of a man whose anger had festered over time, who, perhaps, had been hiding something much darker beneath the surface. The outcome of this case raises more than just legal questions. It brings to light the complex dynamics of domestic violence, how it can be hidden behind closed doors, ignored by those who should have noticed, and how sometimes it takes a tragedy to finally reveal the full scope of the harm that's been done. But while Chris Miller was convicted, there are still many unanswered questions. Was this truly an isolated incident, or is it a chilling example of what can happen when emotional and psychological abuse is allowed to fester unchecked? How many more cases like this exist, where the signs were there but no one spoke up? This case may have reached its legal resolution, but the deeper questions remain. Stay tuned for future updates as the investigation into similar cases continues, as we explore more stories that may shine light on the silent struggles within seemingly perfect homes. If you want to stay updated on the latest true crime stories and uncover more tragic and mysterious cases like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share it with your friends. This is just the beginning of our exploration into these chilling events, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. But we want to hear from you. What do you think happened on that Thanksgiving Day? Was Chris Miller's action driven by one moment, or was there a darker history lurking beneath the surface? Leave your theories and comments below. Let's keep the conversation going. Your insights and opinions could help unravel the truth behind cases like these. Could this tragedy have been avoided? Could a simple apology have saved Lisa's life? We may never know the full truth, but one thing is certain. The consequences of that Thanksgiving Day will haunt the Miller family forever.